And I was just obsessed with RPGs, JRPGs in particular. Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy 3, 6 in Japan, Chrono Trigger, Earthbound. Loved that stuff because I loved a good narrative.
Jhaman, yeah, Jhaman. I hope you like a Jhaman too.
Welcome, one and all, to JhamanCast. This podcast is dedicated to celebrating video games, delivering video game news, and interviews. I adore video games. I love sharing that every week. Stick around, I think you'll have a good time. Today, I have the What's News segment, where I go over this week's video game news, and then the things I found interesting. They're keeping you up to speed on what's going on. And then this week's interview is with a man who is a very talented and accomplished podcaster. You can find him on the podcast The Sinner Files, where they discuss all sorts of movies. He's also the host and creator of the popular and wonderful Countdown to Classic, a podcast that, in his own words, educates, informs, and gossips about everything World of Warcraft Classic. His name is Josh Corbett. I love talking with him, and I hope you enjoy. Before we get started, I want to inform you of a few ways that you can elevate your experience. I have a number of ways that you can join in, be a part of the show. I have a phone number you can call if you're in the USA. If you have a question or want to leave an audio message for me to hear, I might even put it in the show. The number you can call to leave a message is 949-407-9198. That's 949-407-9198. 9198. I have a Discord server you can join to catch up with other fans, some of the guests, and be a member of the community surrounding this podcast. I'll put it in the show's description so you can join easily. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Jhaman the Shaman. You'll know more about what I'm up to and how you can be involved. And I'm also on Twitch at twitch.tv/Jhaman. Whew. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get this podcast started. What's news, everyone? I'll tell you the news here. Thanks for being here. Tuesday, December 9th, 2019, World of Warcraft Classic had a patch. We are now on World of Warcraft Classic version 1.13.3. In this patch, we got Battlegrounds, we got the Key Ring, and we got Elemental Invasions. So I've talked about the specifics of this patch in an earlier episode, but it's finally here. For Battlegrounds, Warsong Gulch and Alterac Valley have been released. If you want to play one of these, you can queue up at Battle Masters in major cities or at the respective Battlegrounds entrances out in the world. Around Ashen Vale for Warsong Gulch, Alterac Mountains for Alterac Valley. Alterac Valley is the 40-person battleground, but you can only queue alone. And Warsong Gulch is a 10-man battleground that allows you to queue with a party. So it's interesting playing Alterac Valley. It's not at all what I expected, but it's also exactly as I remember it in the Burning Crusade. The Horde seemed to be at a major disadvantage when it comes to zerging. And by zerging, I mean just dashing through the game right to the final boss and winning. The Alliance have a very easy time getting to Drekthar, who's the Horde final boss, their objective, while getting to Vandar, the Alliance's final boss, and the Horde's objective takes some more time and effort. It forces the Horde to either give up the game very quickly for quick honor or to cause a turtle and try to win the game through defense. It's very rare to have a game where the Alliance make a concerted effort to play defense. I don't think I've seen that yet in the time I've played, but it's only been a few days and things can of course change. I have seen the Ice Lord summoned twice, and while he's really awesome and is a solid contributor to ending a turtle, the amount of time it takes to get him to work is actually quite a bit. Usually around the 40 to 50 minute mark is when he finally seems to be doing something effective and useful. So I tried one game of Warsong Gulch. I think you're going to want to play this mode with a pre-made. I queued up with 4 other people, and we did not have a healer on our team. I don't have a PvP healing set, and I didn't wear a bunch of cloth gear, and I didn't want to get blown up, wearing cloth gear instantly, so that was a no-go. Unfortunately, we ended up queued up against a pre-made. They were a highly coordinated group and sent their Druid and Paladin duo to cap flags. Even more unfortunate, our team had 0 healers after the matchmaker filled in the rest of our team with damage dealers. It ended up really poorly, and the honor gain through playing it was miles below the Alterac Valley passive honor gains. I believe if you're pushing rank 14, you're either going to need a dedicated 10-man in Warsong Gulch, or you'll need to sit in the solo queue Alterac Valleys for 10 hours a day and soak up that honor. Also in the patch was the Key Ring. It's a nice addition to the game. I have really no complaints. I don't have to worry about leaving a key in my bank by accident anymore, and it's cleared up 4 bag slots for me. So nothing negative Nothing negative to say about it. Happy to have my bag slots back. As for the elemental invasions, I haven't seen one yet. I've been stuck in Alterac Valley grinding out that honor trying to be competitive. I've seen some complaints already that people have said the game is shifted. The world PvP is basically dead. The chances of compelling world PvP are nearly gone. If you're trying to farm honor, you're in Alterac Valley. Now, it's not all negative. One big upside of that is the number of people farming for materials out in the open world has gone down considerably. People are stuck inside Alterac Valley, so if you're looking to make some money, the rare mineral, herbalism, and fishing nodes are all ripe for the taking. Ace, my roommate, he reported to me that he got 13 energized pools in one night from fishing Ajara, which has been previously unheard of. That's a bunch of essence of water to sell in the auction house. The next thing to note is a World of Warcraft blue post that came out with some clarifications on some add-on changes. So Blizzard's changing what's allowed in the add-on department of the game. They said, quote, with the release of World of Warcraft Classic 1.13.3328, we're making a change to disallow calling c_chatinfo.send add-on message with the channel chat type. This will prevent add-ons from communicating over custom, player-created chat channels, unquote. The final part of that quote is a little more important. There was a lot of strain being put on the chat servers due to add-ons like Honor Spy and the way it functioned. On the high population realms, the chat was being lagged because the add-ons were using so much of the chat to communicate behind the scenes. The in-game chat wasn't able to function correctly because of the custom, player-created chat channels that the add-ons were using. Blizzard made a change to break some of those add-ons, but they've also allowed some new stuff to make up for it. Quote, additionally, we are going to test a change to permit c_chatinfo.send add-on message to be called with the say and yell, allowing your add-ons to communicate with players in your immediate vicinity, unquote. This should allow those add-ons to communicate with each other, but only at short ranges, so that the chat isn't being slowed globally to accommodate these add-ons. Add-on creators and users are going to have to adapt to these new rule sets. So done with World of Warcraft Classic, let's talk about Redbox. Yeah, a Verge article reported that Redbox, the rental kiosks, will no longer rent video games, and it will end game sales this year. Redbox is exiting the game rental business, the company confirmed to Verge on Monday, December 9th. Redbox says it is, quote, permanently transitioning out of the games business, unquote, to focus exclusively on movies. The company confirmed on Twitter that game rentals are no longer available. In its tweet, Redbox said that you could still buy games until early next year, but the company clarified to The Verge in its statement that you'll only be able to buy games from a Redbox kiosk, quote, through the end of the year, unquote. If you do have a Redbox near you that offered games, you might be able to get a good deal on some games before they disappear from the kiosk forever at the end of the year. For example, Redbox told Verge that it will offer Death Stranding and Jedi Fallen Order for $39.99. That's a hell of a deal for those games. This is the change in the way of the world. I used to go to Blockbuster and beg my parents to rent me those $11 video games. I don't know how much they were where you live, but the movies were only $7. So it was hard to get my parents to justify spending the extra money, because first off, they couldn't enjoy a video game because they didn't play. They could enjoy a movie, even if it was a kid's movie. So a $7 movie versus $11 video game, oh, it was so hard to get them to just rent the video games for me. But now that's gone. As a kid, you won't be able to try new games unless you have a subscription service like Game Pass. Going to the store, or in this case Redbox, and getting a game is an old business model that died with the times. I'm not upset to see it go, though. It just brings back these nostalgic memories of growing up and going to the rental stores and seeing what they had. It's interesting to look back at the past. And I'm not too worried about Redbox. I never used it, so I can't really complain. It's just interesting to see these business models disappearing even more and more. So the next thing I want to move on to, the next thing I want to talk about is a new study published in the Canadian Journal of Psychiatry. They found that video games are less likely to cause depression and anxiety when compared to other forms of screen time in children. The study explored the effect of screen time on children and the different types of screen time. 3,659 children were surveyed annually from 7th grade through 10th grade. The teens were asked to self-report time spent in front of digital screens and specify the amount of time spent using social media, television, video games, and computers. They found that higher than average social media use and television viewing resulted in more symptoms of anxiety. JMA Pediatrics did another analysis of the same data and found that higher than average social media and television viewing resulted in more depression as well. Video games, specifically though, were not a predictor of either depression or anxiety. The researchers said that was because, quote, compared with their forerunners 15 to 20 years ago, the average video gamer is not socially isolated. It has been shown that more than 70% of gamers play their games with a friend, either physically together or online, end quote. Study author Elroy Bowers, I hope I'm saying that right, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Montreal, explained, quote, the most important caveat is that we believe that content is key. However, we did not examine content yet. I do not believe that the simple act of engaging in screen time has negative consequences, but what adolescents expose themselves to while engaging in screen time. Thus, future research should focus on what kind of content triggers anxiety and depression in adolescents, unquote. This is an interesting study. Of course, I'm happy to talk about any scientific study that paints video games in a positive light. I would talk about a study that showed video games in a negative light if I actually saw one, but I haven't seen that study yet. If you know of one, please hit me up. I want to see it. I want to read it. Send it to me. Some problems I have with the study is that the children self-reported in an annual report what they were doing. I don't know how valid that data can be when it's up to kids to remember how much time they spent doing anything, especially over the course of a year. How can they remember vividly how much time they actually spent on things? I can barely remember how much time I spend on stuff. I'll look up and realize 4 hours have gone by, and then someone can ask me, how much time do you spend playing video games? And I don't know. I'm not tracking that. I can't imagine a teenager with a developing brain, how they would be able to have a handle on how much time has elapsed and what they're doing. Anyway, that aside, what the study has found makes sense to me. The social experience of video games has transformed over the recent decades. At the beginning, you had to go to an arcade to play them. You'd meet people there. Then they became consoles and computer games, and you'd have games where you played together on local screens or networks. And now you have games across the internet that are social experiences that kids are leaping on. So it seems okay to play a certain amount of games. Of course, take everything in moderation. This is not a study saying playing games 24/7 is a good idea. I don't know if you guys heard about this. This is the next thing I want to talk about today. The Game Awards happened last week. Tons of nominees and winners were displayed, as well as a bunch of game announcements. So the Game of the Year award went to From Software and Activision's Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. The game deserves it. It's a fantastic game with a unique combat model. Yes, it's similar to Dark Souls. It's made by the same people, but it's focused on parrying mechanics, and the story behind the gameplay really drives this game into the Game of the Year status. It's got a fantastic motif, and I can agree with the choice of Sekiro as Game of the Year. The standout, though, from the Game Awards was a little indie game. It's called Disco Elysium, which won all 4 categories it was nominated in, including narrative, role-playing game, independent game, and fresh indie game. I've never heard of this game. Now I need to check it out. It's on sale on Steam as I record this, and its blurb description is, quote, Disco Elysium is a groundbreaking open-world role-playing game. You're a detective with a unique skill system at your disposal and a whole city block to carve your path across. Interrogate unforgettable characters, crack murders, or take bribes. Become a hero or an absolute disaster of a human being, unquote. It's a single-player, story-driven, choices matter RPG, and that sounds awesome, and it looks very unique. The next thing I want to talk about is Godfall. So the game Godfall was announced during the Game Awards. It's the first announced PlayStation 5 game. It was apparently inspired a little bit by Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive and others. Godfall is a third-person fantasy looter-slasher focused on melee combat coming to PlayStation 5. Keith Lee, the creative director on Godfall and CEO of Counterplay Games, did an interview with PlayStationLifestyle.net. And PlayStation Lifestyle asked, quote, what were some of the inspirations behind Godfall's looter-slasher gameplay? On paper, it seems like a mix of Diablo, Borderlands, Destiny, Darksiders, and perhaps a few others thrown in the mix for good measure, unquote. And Keith Lee responded with, quote, Brandon Sanderson's ongoing The Stormlight Archive series, Joe Abercrombie's The First Law trilogy and Isaac Asimov's Foundation series sets the tone and texture of our fantasy world. The long-running Monster Hunter series, with their diverse weapon class playstyle, ranging from fast combos to more deliberate play, has always drawn us together as a team, unquote. Those books, the visuals from the game have all piqued my interest. The game will be on PlayStation 5 and PC, so I cannot wait to get my hands on it. You throw the name Brandon Sanderson on something, and it better live up to the glory that is that man, because that man is glorious. Do not taint that name, Keith Lee. Watch yourself, Keith Lee, because Brandon Sanderson's a holy name. All right, that's what I got for you guys. That's everything I have for the What's News segment. There's a lot that happened, but I feel like those were the big highlights, the big foundational things that you guys would want to hear about. The next thing I have for you is a fantastic interview. I was really appreciative of this man. He came on. Josh Corbett, the host of Countdown to Classic, the World of Warcraft Classic podcast, really the best classic podcast out there, came on and gave me a sit-down interview and talked to me and told me about why he loves video games. Well, he told me about his video game history. I asked him a couple questions. So here's the interview, guys. I hope you enjoy it. My interview with Josh Corbett. Welcome, everyone, to another JhamanCast interview. I'm joined today by a man who is very talented and accomplished podcaster. You can find him on the podcast The Sinner Files, where they discuss all sorts of movies. He's also the host and creator of the popular and wonderful Countdown to Classic, a podcast that, in his own words, educates, informs, and gossips about everything World of Warcraft Classic. His name is Josh Corbett, and I'm so excited to have you on. I want to thank you for being here. How are you today, man?
I'm really good, man, and it's my absolute pleasure to be here. It's always really flattering when people invite me on their podcast as well. I really honestly never thought that would be happening as a result of the show, but I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I just having on, it's been, you're the first person actually from another podcast. I've had a bunch of people on, Twitch streamers. I've had people on that work for like game advertising firms and like people that make games. I've never had an actual other podcaster that focuses on, and specifically World of Warcraft, especially because I talk about that constantly. But having you on, it's pretty special having you. And I'm really happy to have you here.
No, it's good, man. And I mean, just speaking to you, obviously, before we started recording, just talking about like little podcast stuff, like, you know, others will never know our pain. You know what I mean? Like the little things that we go through.
Yeah, the worries and it's all good. But I think people enjoy it. And people seem to enjoy the shows. So and I love Countdown to Classic. I'm just listening to it, especially recently when I interviewed Ale, who was on Countdown a lot. When I interviewed him, he was like, yeah, and if you listen to Countdown to Classic, because I'm on there all the time, and I was like, I've listened, I didn't realize you were on, and then I started listening to more episodes, and I was like, oh my gosh, Ale's on like a lot of episodes. He's been in a caller a lot on your show, and
Ale is my brother in arms. Literally, like when I say this, I mean it. The Countdown would not be the same without him. If I didn't catch a few lucky breaks along the way, you know, getting people like Ale involved, but particularly Ale. You know, he got involved relatively early, around about sort of episode 60-ish, so halfway through the show's run, and was just so good and, more importantly, so keen to be involved. You know, listeners just fell in love with him instantly. And so, you know, the show just really has people like that to thank for its success.
Yeah, the community is really impressive, and Ale being one of them is it's fantastic. It just really does make the show a good thing when you have all those people on. So to get to this show, to get to the prime topic, I want to ask you about your video game history, what made you you, and what you just made you fall in love with video games. So the first question I have for you is, what was the first game that you ever played that left an impression on you?
A story I often tell is, in terms of, I mean, it's not really a positive impression, even though I love the game, but one of my earliest memories, or two earliest memories, I'll give you one positive, one negative, and they probably both need to be combined in order. I mean, you know, a lot of gamers get angry from time to time with games, but the positive one I'll give you is Super Mario Brothers 2. Even though I remember playing Super Mario Brothers, I really became sort of obsessed with gaming and trying to just get through a game and finish it with Super Mario Bros. 2 when I was very, very young. God, I would have been like 7 years old, something like that. Around about the same age, I'd give you another story with Castlevania. Or obviously, I'm talking about the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Castlevania is still regarded as the original, at least, a relatively, at times, tricky-ish game with difficulty. The original Nintendo games were a little bit harder. And so, just one simple slip, you're falling into water and you're insta-death and you're back to the beginning or whatever. And as a 6 or 7 year old playing those games, it was really, really frustrating. And I just remember my first sort of colorful barrage of language at the television and many deaths in Castlevania. And, it left an impression on me. And I still, I fell in love with gaming and I just wanted more and more and more. And it's, led me to still be doing it today.
So the frustration of dying made you fall in love with gaming?
Well, yeah, it's funny because I often find myself saying to friends at work, they query about what I do with Countdown and the fact that I'm a gamer every now and again. And it's even saying it to fellow gamers. It might seem really silly to say, but I do bring it up every now and again. Like video games, people forget are a game. It's someone's has sat down, they've crafted a rule set, an objective, and like, hey, I'll come up with a game for you. If you can get from X to Y while avoiding, A, B, C, and you can do the following, 1, 2, 3 things, let's see if you can win my game.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to complete the game. You're trying to win the game. You're finishing someone's game within the rule set that they've contrived for you. And so dying constantly in Castlevania, I was like, stuff this. I really I want to be able to complete this person's challenge. And so I think it instilled a good bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Persistence.
Yeah.
In myself as a young gamer that, hasn't necessarily carried over to every game. I'll still rage quit a game every now and again, but still wanting to push forward and seeing what these guys have created for us. And, I don't want everything to be a walk in the park. So it's a good lesson.
Yeah. I've said that about the Nintendo Switch and a lot of their games, that they feel like games and not necessarily like, I think God of War and like some of the newer games, they're very great games, but they're more of like an experience and like a story. Right. And you're like, oh, this is a really good story. But like some of these games that you're just like, oh, here's the rule set, figure it out.
Oh, Nintendo's are the king at that. They really Nintendo is still the king of doing that in terms of when you strip away the story and everything, they're not, as you say, they're not big on huge plot lines and cinematic experiences or anything, but they'll just go, we've got a game for you to play, see how you go within it and see if you enjoy it. And obviously a lot of people still do. I still love Nintendo games as well.
The princess is been kidnapped by Bowser. Like, oh, that's never been done before. Like, let's it's were there any other games that stood out to you as you grew up that also informed your opinions of what makes a good game? Were there specific RPGs? I mean, before World of Warcraft, obviously that's a huge one. Were there anything before or after? Let's just avoid WoW for now. Games that really informed you?
I'm a really big sort of, with my age, I'm 37 years old. The era that I grew up in was, really the Super Nintendo was my formative years with gaming. Even though I started playing with the Nintendo, I was still pretty young.
Yeah.
By the time the Super Nintendo came into my life, I would have been like, 11, 12 years old. And I think that generation over the next, 3 or 4 years was, I think what a lot of people would look back on and see as their formative years as a gamer between about, 11 to 15 or so.
Right.
And I was just obsessed with RPGs, JRPGs in particular. Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy 3, 6 in Japan, Chrono Trigger, Earthbound. Loved that stuff because I loved a good narrative. And I guess that's part of what drew me into WoW, just to touch on it very lightly, is that even though WoW's not known for its narrative, it's still so steeply set in a world with all this amazing lore and flavor behind it that you don't necessarily need the story. You just go like, there's clearly a history here and a world and people have done things.
Yeah.
And that's what I enjoyed in my early Super Nintendo games. Is I was a big reader as a kid. Unfortunately, not as much now, although I'm trying to get back into it. But I read a lot, and I loved a good narrative, and so I gravitated towards having a story told to me. And what were the biggest and best stories? They were found in RPGs, so that's what I gravitated towards.
Yeah, I've talked about it before, but Final Fantasy IV is the game I answered as the first game that left an impression on me, and I think it was Final Fantasy II in Japan or something. I don't know how I forget
Or
how
4 in Japan, 2 in the US.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, with Cecil, then he becomes.
Yeah.
A game like blew my mind when I was like, oh, we're playing like we're like a RPG, like Knights and Wizards. That's cool. And then you're like climbing a giant robot, and you're like, what is happening? Like, it's just, it's just amazing. It was, and the story itself, I was like, oh, he's changing. Oh my god. Spoiler alert for a game that's over 20 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's. I want to ask about your the social aspects of gaming. Was it a social experience for you when you initially started playing these games, or was there people around that you were like chatting with and talking like, "Hey, did you play this game? Did you play it?" Or was it more like a challenge and for you particularly, and just like this is a challenge mode for me, and this is something I do that's special for me?
I mean, I've always enjoyed talking about games with other people, but weirdly, I mean, it's ironic given that one of my great loves is World of Warcraft Classic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a super duper socialite when it comes to gaming. In game, I'm not very chatty. I don't really do the hang much with people that are like-minded that play similar games and things like that. It's funny because I was playing, I mean, a bit different, but like I was playing LOL earlier this morning. And everyone's chatting and sort of barking instructions or just shooting the shit. I never say anything. I'm that guy, and it seems to apply to a lot of different games, which is weird because I'm super chatty in real life. So I don't know, it's kind of like games are where I go to escape a little bit and not have to talk for a while. But in saying that, I read everything. I know what the conversation is.
Yeah.
I'm just not necessarily taking part of it myself. But in terms of growing up and talking to people about games, absolutely. I would find the guys in my grade who were gamers as well, and we would organize to go and do like a day at a friend's house to go and check out the games that they had that you didn't have, because games are expensive. Your parents wouldn't buy just any game you wanted. So if you had a library of a half a dozen games, maybe your friend with another half a dozen games, there wasn't much crossover, and you'd be like, oh snap, you've got that game, I've been trying to try that. I'll come over for the day, check it out, and then we can come over to my place the next week and check out mine. And that's just kind of how it went. And then obviously get a bit older, get a job, get an income, and now I can afford to buy most of the games I want. I still can't afford to buy them all, but I would if I could.
Yeah, or the time to play them all.
That's the biggest thing, is we're all time poor, aren't we?
Yeah. It's I can't wait for someone to invent a pill that makes it so we don't have to sleep. Just a super coffee.
Can't wait.
I'm just remembering that my friend with the Sega Genesis and how much cooler he was than me, because I only had the Super Nintendo, and I was like, oh, he's got Sonic, man. That's the edgy, cool one. I only have Mario.
I was never a big Sonic guy. I had a weird thing with Sonic that still kind of carries on to this day, where I'm like, I felt odd that this, what was a beautiful game was designed, and you blow by it at 1,000,000 miles per hour. And I was the weirdo that would play Sonic and kind of stop and play it at Mario speed, because I'm like, look at all this cool stuff they put in the game. I want to walk around the level and look at it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you play it, as it's supposed to be played, you just fly through everything and kind of have fun. That the whirlwind tour that is a Sonic level. But I don't know. I just kind of always wanted to stop and smell the roses.
Yeah, Sonic, just for me, Sonic was like the cool, like, I'll never be as cool as Sonic. So it was like the unknown, because I never got to play it really, unless I was at a friend's house. And then Mario was like the staple, like solid, like this is what gaming start as, and then let's see where we can go from here. So when did you start playing WoW? Did you play Vanilla WoW?
I did, absolutely. So it's something where you think I'd know more about the game, given that I did play Vanilla WoW, but I'm just as much of a casual now as I was then. I absolutely played Vanilla WoW. I started the game about 6 months before Burning Crusade came out. got to 60 about 3 or 4 weeks before BC dropped, and kind of that was it. Like I always wished I just had more vanilla time. Because you ding 60 and you're like, great, now the real game starts, right? And then the expansion drops, and it's like, oh
yeah,
okay, all right.
yeah.
But I really enjoyed the Burning Crusade, so I was kind of fine with it. If that was what WoW was now, there's a pretty good point of the game to drop in as a fresh 60 or getting to 70, obviously.
Yeah.
It just it always itched at me though, like, oh, all these people talk about the vanilla days and how cool they were, and that's why I was so interested in Classic, and I'm obviously so glad that we got it.
Me too. Yeah, I was leveling in Classic. I was like level 20, I think, when Burning Crusade launched, and so I never got to really see it. I remember people talking about Stratholme, and like we would do Strat, and you would have to fight Baron Rivendare, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. But you'd only see. I don't ever saw it as a 70. I was like, I never went back and saw it. I mean, it was still difficult when you didn't know what you're doing, but. So Classic coming out has just been this like beautiful experience, and I'm really actually a little worried that we're having the same thing happen though, where I'm like, I just got into World PvP. I know it's horrible. I know everyone wants to quit the game, but I kind of want to experience this for like 3 more weeks. I want to just like sit in this for a little longer. And now Battlegrounds are out, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Well, all right. Now let's adapt to this mode. And oh wow, look at all these new rewards that are out, and like the game is it's ever evolving. But I'm always scared that it's moving even too fast now. I'm like, well, slow it down.
A lot of people have worried that it is moving very fast. I mean, it's something where I've kind of been okay with it. But, I appreciate people's concerns. The whole, are they just catering to the streamers and everything? I talked about this recently, whether it was on the show or just on stream, but saying that I think the one thing that Blizzard's really trying to avoid, which I sort of agree with from a business standpoint, is that they can't have people on stream, big streamers with lots of people watching, trying to play WoW Classic and just sighing and saying, I'm really bored with this game.
Yeah.
That's when they're in trouble. So I do understand, and I again understand why the people who aren't streamers would get a bit bent out of shape about it. Believe me, I completely see where you're coming from. But it is kind of a bit of a two sides to the coin situation. So I don't know, it's such a tough one for them to balance.
What was your first class and race that you played?
I was a Night Elf Rogue.
And
it's funny because I never want to touch rogues again. I'm so done with that class. Not that I don't hate them. I have no interest in going back. It's like, I know exactly what it's like. And I was just ready for a fresh experience.
And you're doing priest now, right? Is that right?
I'm doing a priest now and loving it. I'm a shadow priest, and I healed up to 60 and really had a good time healing. I loved it much more so than I thought I would, but I'm just now I'm not going to rule out going back to healing at some point, but for now I'm happy being a shadow.
Yeah, my roommate just turned shadow, and he's like, he's super happy. He's being a shadow priest. How did you fare during the World PvP phase? You were leveling still, right? And did you have to fight these zergs of people, or did you heal through it?
I absolutely had to level through phase 2, and I dinged 60 during phase 2, which is a badge of honor that I'll always kind of have. But it's I kind of, I don't know, if you want to say, like, played with the system a little bit. I didn't get bothered as much by the Gankapalooza that phase 2 was. Reason being is that I was just playing in off-peak hours. I'd get up at 4 a.m. to play the game, and if that's what I had to, what I had to do in order to hit 60, then so be it. It just didn't really bother me as much. I wake up early anyway and whatever, but appreciating, that not everyone wants to do that. During busy hours, I saw everything that people were talking about. I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite as bad as everything I read on Reddit and saw on YouTube. And believe me, I've seen all the videos. I've heard all the complaints, that people literally can't go, 5 yards without getting ganks, regardless of where they are in the world. I could kind of get around and do a little bit of something before the murder squads came my way. Now, they were definitely there. And, I know that a lot of Alliance people have complained about the imbalance and everything.
Yeah.
I've frequently said, like, guys, from my experience, the Alliance is alive and well on my server.
Yeah.
I know that it's horde skewed 60-40 or 55-45, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
but the Alliance I think the Alliance is more coordinated on my server. So
hardened by their
they're much of course, outside of my amazing guild.
Right.
I've really found that just world PvP coordination and now battleground coordination. I haven't won a battleground yet. I've only done like 5 or 6, but
yeah.
I haven't been able to play the game much since they came out. But I've lost everyone, and the Alliance just seems to be on top of things. So I don't know. The Alliance is doing okay.
Yeah. I was going to ask about your faction balance on your server. I'm on Scarum, and it's like 70-20 or something like that, or 70-30. But there's a video on YouTube of a guy trying to go into Dire Maul that I've seen. I think I've posted and shared in my Discord server and stuff. But it took him like, I don't know, an hour to get into Dire Maul because he has to keep running. He gets 3 feet and dies again trying to get in, just walking in. And again, he's going alone. And honestly, I was one of those people. I watched the video honestly being like, am I in this video killing him? Because that's what you did. You just sat in front of instances, and that was the easiest way to gain honor. Obviously now it's different with the Battlegrounds out. If you're going to go for honor, you just basically sit in AV all day, which has its own implications of being a problem, but it's actually a lot of fun still for me. I want to ask you.
Go ahead. Sorry, just before you get into it, that happened on my server. Well, notorious guild on my server. My server's Aragal, by the way, one of the Aussie servers. So I shouldn't say Aussie. One of the Oceanic servers. Obviously, there's people from the whole region in there. Now, and there's this Alliance guild that is really, really notorious for just basically their claim to fame is that they own Blackrock Mountain, and they have really, and there's a lot of going on, and it's not like it's right out there in the open. They're not being shy about the fact that there are Horde and Alliance guilds colluding for this Alliance guild to basically own Blackrock Mountain. But again, the whole phase 1, phase 2, particularly phase 2, if you wanted to go to do an instance in Blackrock Mountain, you were going to be doing minimum I'd say minimum 5 death runs if you're going to Blackrock Spire. But if you're going to BRD, buckle up for that half an hour trip in, because you're dying 10 to 15 times. And, I know people have been saying this, and I went through it. Yeah, the 5 yards, you'd res and make it 5 more yards, because then the rogue comes out of nowhere and gets you. Or they're just everywhere. There's 40 of them just littering that road.
Wow.
And, again, everyone in the Alliance was kind of having a little bit of a whinge about the faction imbalance on our server. And I was like, dudes, I, as a Horde, cannot do instances. You own the mountain. Like, at least you've got something.
Yeah. And honestly, I cannot tell you how silly. I know it's their feelings are true and genuine, and they're allowed to have them. But like, when you say you're 55-45, I'm like, that's like perfect. That's perfect. Honestly, like, if they were like, I went on my server. We were at Alterac Valley, the entrance to Alterac Valley for the Horde, and you can queue up there and go in. And we got a bunch of mages together, and they all took invisibility potions, and we ran over to the Alterac Valley entrance. And the Alterac Valley entrance for the Horde is literally hundreds of people stuffed into this cave and just pouring out of it. We went over and said, let's take invisibility potions. We're going over to the Alliance side. We're going to just go in there, arcane power, arcane explosion. We're going to get hundreds of HKs. We go in there. There was 12 people there. It was literally the 200 versus 12 people on the server seeing the Alliance, and it's just wow. It's to see that many people not in their cave it's just, I don't know if it's better to queue up in Stormwind if it's, but all the vendors are there and all the quest givers are there. So most people I've seen that are doing the Alterac Valley farm are sitting there. It's just crazy to me, the balance. And when you say 55-45, I'm like, God, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it's not too bad. And I mean, appreciating that only one or two of the servers, it seems to have pretty near perfect balance. I'll take it. It doesn't feel broken on our server, but again, that's easy for me to say being on the slightly stronger faction.
Yeah, that is true. So I wanted to ask you about your podcast. We talked about it a little bit, like why did you start this podcast? And how has your vision of it evolved over time? Is the question.
Basically, I started up the podcast because after I found out that World of Warcraft Classic was coming, I'm a podcast guy. I wanted to listen to podcasts. I want to be able to open up, Spotify or my, Apple Podcasts, whatever. And I wanted to see options about WoW Classic podcasts. Now, they just announced the game. It was, more than likely a long way away. But I was still like, no, I don't care. I want content now. I want to listen to people talking about this game now.
Yeah.
And the only thing that was out there, like Classic Cast had started 3 weeks before I decided to pull the trigger on Countdown to Classic.
Yeah.
And this Countdown to Classic was in no way going like, oh, I'll just do what they're doing.
Right.
And, it was literally, I watched Classic Cast and I was like, cool. People are talking about it. I want something different. And what I wanted was talkback radio for WoW Classic, basically. And I wanted, to hear from a variety of people. And I thought, screw it, I'll give it a go. I tried I just started the Cinephiles. It was only about 2 months into its run. I had tried podcasting years ago and had a good time. I'd always kind of wanted to be in radio. And it was really, really, really good fun. And so just getting it started, the biggest challenge for me was, all right, cool. I've got, I had a bit of the equipment. I had a bit of the know-how. The one thing I didn't have, I had, a radio voice or whatever. One thing I didn't have was expertise on the subject matter, which is a little bit problematic when you're starting a podcast. Like, you want to listen to someone who knows what the fuck they're talking about. And so this was the problem. It's like, I'm keen. I want to do this, but people will not buy what I'm selling because they'll know I'm a scrub. And, one of the obvious ways to overcome that was, well, what if I turn into a facilitator?
Yeah.
What if I can be the guy that people call because I know I can talk to people. I know I can ask questions. I do it professionally for a living. If I can just somehow get people calling in to talk to me, because I'll be the interested person asking them all the questions. And look, luckily, the greatest thing that ever happened for the show was that it only took, about, less than 20 episodes. People slowly but surely enjoyed the solo stuff, what I was doing and fair's fair. Some of the show, I was lucky. The show got very few negative comments over the course of its run. It was, in this day and age, particularly with, gamers, the WoW community, we call a spade a spade. If we don't like something, we'll tell people, and there's nothing wrong with that. I somehow avoided many negative comments, but in the early run of the show, people were really good in helping me out, going like, you're doing this on your own. You need to, they were saying he's just reading comments on Reddit. And I was like, I know, but I got nothing else to do until people start calling in. And luckily, the kind of analysis that I was breaking down, like I wasn't just literally reading back Reddit comments verbatim.
Right.
I would do that, and then I would throw in my own commentary on top of that, which it was basically like, the director's commentary of a Reddit thread, which is a bit funny. But that's all I could do when I was alone. And then thankfully people picked up on what I was trying to do, and they're like, all right, Josh, we'll start to call in. And you'd get one caller, and then that would turn into two callers. And slowly but surely I was getting, people just kicking down my door going, I want to be on the show. You're getting 6 calls per episode. And everyone was just so great. And it's because of this amazing community that we have. WoW Classics community gets a lot of shit that I really don't think all of it is deserved. Don't get me wrong. Some of it's deserved, but on the whole, we're, a pretty great community in my mind. And I think Countdown to Classic, the podcast, is one of the great examples of what a great community can help to build.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Just seeing the community build up just looking at your Discord and seeing the community built up there, it's really impressive. And it's something to. I'm like, I want to be a part of this. I want to see this. This is this is really cool to see. And that brings me to my next question. And you announced last episode that the show's coming to an end. So for people who are unfamiliar with Countdown, you announced that it's going to end. And so I've noticed over the last few weeks you've discussed some ways of keeping the spirit of the show alive while lessening the workload. Do you have any ideas currently that you can talk about in regards to that?
It's been a really, really tough process for me winding up the show. It's something where it's not going to make everyone happy. A lot of people saying,
of course,
don't stop, keep doing it weekly. People are saying, mate, and I appreciate a lot of people saying, mate, if it's hard, just do it monthly or just do it whenever you want. As long as we get it in some way, just please don't end it. And I appreciate that as well. But, it's just something that, and it's my fault because I was so keen to start the show so early and get my foot in the door, which honestly, I wouldn't change for a second because it's because the show started so early that it was able to be successful. But it did lead to a little bit of burnout, and the show is weirdly ending kind of 4 months into the game's run, when in a perfect world you'd have it starting 6 months before the game came out and then running all the way through Classic's life span. But I have worked myself to the bone and I'm just ready for a break. And I'm trying to stream a little bit more, and if on stream occasionally we talk about WoW, then so be it. I'm more than happy to. But I'm not if people were worried, because I know that some content creators have done this before, ditched what they were doing and going come and see it on Twitch. And, I'm not picking up Countdown and moving it to Twitch. Countdown is done. But in saying that, like I said, if I'm doing a Twitch stream and a fan is like, hey, Josh, I would love to hear your take on such and such a topic that's happening in Classic, I'd be like, why don't you just call me or a Countdown and we'll talk about it on stream. I'm more than happy to do something super casual like that. But the super polished production that was Countdown, sadly, yes, it's being put out to pasture.
Gotcha. Wow. Yeah, I honestly, I remember I was listening to your episode and I was driving to work and my heart was thumping. I was like, what the hell? I didn't realize I cared this much about this show. I was like, my heart, and I was like, all right, okay, I'm prepared for it. It's all right. And I was thinking, I was like, well, it is called Countdown to Classic, and the countdown has come out. It's out now. I was like, all right, we got it. We counted down.
It's one thing I do often come back to is whether or not I should have ended the show when the game came out. And, arguably, yes. However, some of my favorite content has come post-release, and that's come from, some of the developer interviews that I've been able to grab. And even though it's not Classic related, because we're talking about other MMOs, those have been some of my favorite conversations. So I am glad that the show kept going. There was a lot more that we got through, but the countdown maybe should have ended at the countdown.
Yeah, count up now is what we're on.
Yeah, well, Countdown to Crusade might be the next thing, as everyone's sort of saying, but I don't know if I'll have it in me.
So are there any games that you've played recently that have really captured your attention? From WoW's obviously there, but is there anything that you've been like, wow, that's a pretty good game?
Oh, every game. Like you said, I'd play them all if we had the I have been trying to play Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Was actually I'm probably going to play that straight after this interview. Like I said, I was trying to get back into League of Legends, and everyone, my fiance kills me for enjoying League of Legends more than Dota 2. But sadly, that's kind of just the way I'm built. I don't know why, but something about LoL kind of appeals to me. I'm not very good at it, and I tried to play it on stream for the first time in 5 years before, and I was horrible and forgot even the most basic mechanics of the game because I hadn't thought about it in 5 years. But I'm happy to play a bit more of that. But there's plenty coming out that I'm excited about. On the horizon, things like Ghost of Tsushima. I can't wait to get my hands on. I want to play some. I was just talking about when it hits, maybe when it drops in price a little bit, some Borderlands 3. Would love to maybe try some COD again. I'm not a big COD guy, but I just want a shooter. I really want to get my hands on a shooter that I can just sit down for 20 or 30 minutes when I have it and go, all right, I'm just going to try and kill some people in a first-person shooter for a little bit. But I'm not sure which game to try and pick up and do that with. But I mean, everything and anything. I will mostly. There's very few genres of games I can think of that I don't really like.
The one that everyone wants is the hacker one. What is it? Shoot, I already forgot it. The Cyberpunk. That's it. Everyone's excited about Cyberpunk. Have you ever played? Did you play Witcher 3 at all?
I did. I loved it.
Yeah, so made by the same people coming out. The Cyberpunk one supposed to have a great story again. And then today, I don't know, but the PlayStation 5 game Godfall was announced. Keith Lee, the CEO of the game company making it, said that it's inspired by Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive, Joe Abercrombie's The First Law trilogy, and Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. Setting the tone for their fantasy world.
It's funny you mentioned Brandon Sanderson. My fiance is a big fan of his, and she's giving me a funny look now because I just invoked his name. I have never read a Brandon Sanderson book. I know nothing of his work outside of the fact that he's an incredibly accomplished writer.
Right.
I picked up the Mistborn trilogy for the first time 3, 4, 5 days ago, and cannot put it down. I'm loving it. And I know, listeners will be like, oh my God, Mistborn. It's so good. I have no idea, obviously, what's to come in the plot, but, I'm 100 pages into the first book of the trilogy and loving it.
Oh my God. I have the biggest smile on my face because I just can't it's just such a good book series. And his books only get, it's not a video, it's not a book game, it's not a book podcast, but his books only get better. Like the Stormlight Archive is incredible.
There's such overlap, though. A lot of people enjoy WoW, are consumers of fantasy media too. And so I know so many Countdown listeners would talk about books that they were reading. And, I'm not a big reader. Like I said, my fiance is a huge reader. She reads like a book a week or 2 books a week. She's crazy that way. But she loves fantasy. She's always found it shocking that for someone who loves fantasy video games, I don't read fantasy books. And she's just like, you just haven't read the right one yet. And I said, maybe. And that's why she's like, Brandon, it's got to start with Brandon. And I think she's probably right.
Yeah. Oh my God. And you're you're only 100 pages in, and you're loving it. Listen, some people tell me all the time about this book series that, it's boring for the first 100 pages, and then it's only once you get through the halfway point that you start going, that's what's so like.
God no, I love the explanation of the allomancy, and because I like, again, he's giving you a rule set and going, here's how things work in my universe,
right?
And I really enjoyed that.
And he never breaks that rule. He never breaks those rules that he lays down.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, it's so good.
Great.
That's the best part of that series. He never breaks his rules. Oh, it's so good. Video games are so good because of that. That's true though too. A game that tells you the rules and then changes them, that would piss me off if I played a game like that. I don't know. I'm not things coming to mind right now, but unless it was, a decent change. But I don't know. Oh man. It's a good series. So all of a sudden I saw that today, and I was like, I remember having a Twitter moment with you about your fiance, right? Talking about Brandon Sanderson, and I was like, oh, I can't believe this new game is coming out. It's inspired by Brandon Sanderson. I got to mention it in the interview. Godfall, so PS5.
Yeah, so is that the one? I'm trying to think because I watched the trailer as well. I know it wasn't much of a trailer, but is that the one that they were describing as a God, what were they saying? Like a melee, not looter shooter, but they're saying it was like a melee looter.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a third-person fantasy looter slasher focused on melee combat.
That's the one, the looter slasher. That's the term I was looking for.
Yeah, which I didn't even see the trailer. I just saw that blurb about Brandon Sanderson. I was like, oh, I'm gonna check it out.
Lovely.
Yeah, it looks good though. I'm watching the trailer right now. It's got some fire, got some armor, some pretty cool looking stuff going on there.
No, I look for a lot of that stuff coming out of the Game Awards. We'll check out.
Mm-hmm. All right, man. Well, that's everything I have for you today, and I want to thank you so much. It's a nice little touchstone to see what you're about, what informed you of who you are, and I want to thank you for coming on again.
Mate, my pleasure. It's been really, really nice to, as I say, come on another podcast, to have a chat with someone.
Yeah.
More than happy to do it, and happy to talk about anything, even the books. It's all good, man. Thanks for having me, Jhaman. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. You can start your Brandon Sanderson podcast soon.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm gonna go get to editing this thing now. So enjoy not having to do that.
I will. It's a very nice thing to be able to sit down and end an interview and go, well, that's someone else's cleanup job now.
Yeah. I love it, dude. I'm going to keep doing it, and thank you again.
Definitely do, man. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Josh Corbett. I was so happy to have him on and get a glimpse into who he is as a person and how video games have fit into his life. As for myself and this podcast, there's always more coming down the pipe. I release a new episode every Saturday that I hope you enjoy. So until then, have a great night, have a great life, and have a great morning.